Hi, I'm David. So for this problem, we're given an equation, 4x squared plus 4y squared plus 12x minus 24y plus 41 is equal to 0. And they're asking us to take this and move some things around in order to make it into the standard form for graphing a circle, which is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Remember, h and k are the coordinates for the center of the circle, h being the x coordinate of the center and k being the y coordinate of the center, with r meaning the radius of the circle. So in order to take this and rearrange it into this format, we need to remove the coefficients in front of the x's and the y's, and we also need to shift some things around so that we have an r squared on the other side. So to do this, we need to complete the square for the x's and for the y's. So the first thing we can do is to divide everything here by 4, because we can see here that these 4 terms all have the common factor of 4. Each of these could be divided by 4. So let's divide everything by 4. And of course, if we divide this side by 4, we have to divide this side by 4. This becomes x squared plus y squared plus 3x minus 6y plus 41 over 4 is all equal to 0, because 0 divided by 4 is still 0. And now we can rearrange these letters a bit so that we group the x's together and group the y's together. That way we can complete the square in the following step. So that then becomes x squared plus 3x, and then I'm going to leave a little bit of space because we're going to complete the square later, plus y squared minus 6y, and again I'm going to leave a bit of space, plus 41 over 4 is equal to 0. Cool. So now, in order to complete the squares, we have to look at these separately, right? So for the x's, what we need to do is to take this middle term, this b term, which is 3, and divide it by 2 and square that whole thing and add that to the end, right? So we need to take the 3, divide this by 2, square that whole thing, and add it to the end, because that final result would give us the ability to create a perfect square from the x's. And then we got to do the same thing with the y's. So 3 over 2 squared ends up being this, right? 3 over 2, all that squared. Same goes for here. So here we do negative 6 divided by 2. That becomes negative 3, and then we have to square that, right? So this we could just write it as negative 6 divided by 2, all of that squared, right? So now we have created the ability for these to become perfect squares. But if we add this to the left side, we also have to add the same thing to the right side. Same goes for here. If we add this to the left side, we have to add it to the right side as well. So let's balance this equation out. So this becomes 3 over 2 squared as well. And then we'll also add another negative 6 over 2 squared. So that way we've balanced the equation so that both sides are still equal. Now we can complete the square. So this now becomes x plus 3 over 2, all of that squared, right? And then meanwhile here, this just becomes the first term, y, minus this squared. Right? And we can always double check a work. And then meanwhile for this, we can remove this now and move it to the other side as well. So now we're going to have this plus this minus this. So now we've moved everything that's not the perfect squares to this side of the equation, right? And so now we can do a little bit of simplifying. So this is already in the most simplified form, but the y part of it could be simplified, right? So this, obviously, like we said earlier, we know -6/2 is just -3, right? Over here, we can simplify this. 3 squared is 9, 2 squared is 4. -3/2 is, -6/2 is -3. -3 squared is +9. And then this is still just 41/4. Cool. And now we can simplify this even more by combining these together. So in order to add them, we need a common denominator here with the 9. So what we could do is multiply the 9 by 4/4. So then that becomes 9 times 4, that's 36/4. And then we drop these. And all of this stays the same, because we've pretty much finished everything we're going to do on the left side of the equation, right? So now all we have to do is just combine this part. So 9 plus 36, that's 45. 45 minus 41, that's 4. So the final answer here is going to be 4/4. And we know 4/4 is just 1. So the final equation of everything is going to be x plus 3/2, all of that squared, plus, parentheses, y minus 3, all of that squared, is equal to 1. And this is the final answer for taking this and changing it into the standard form for graphing a circle, right? Notice the h's and the k's line up. So remember here there's a negative sign and a negative sign here. There are two subtraction signs here. So what it really means is that this 3 is really just a +3, right? That k is just 3, because it's -3 minus k. But here, you're technically subtracting a negative. So h here is actually a -3/2, because you have to subtract h. So you're subtracting a -3/2, which is what's giving you the +3/2. So then the coordinates for the center would be -3/2, 3. And then meanwhile, the radius would just be 1, because 1 squared is just 1, and the square root of 1 is also 1. If you wanted to, you could add a square symbol here, but you don't have to. So the radius is just 1. And that is how you solve this problem.